Bem-vindos ao Observatório da Imprensa. Quero compartilhar com vocês uma experiência extraordinária. Encontrei o humanismo em estado puro. Entrevistei durante 50 minutos o sociólogo e pensador polonês Zygmunt Bauman, quase 90 anos, conhecidíssimo no Brasil, que não é apenas um homem cultíssimo, uma verdadeira enciclopédia. Ele é muito mais, mas muito mais do que isso. Ele é uma alma intensa, onde todas essas informações são processadas humanamente. Eu tenho certeza que vocês vão ter a mesma sensação que eu tive.
Zygmunt Bauman nasceu na Polônia em 1925. Aos 89 anos, é um dos intelectuais mais respeitados da atualidade. Na juventude, serviu no exército da União Soviética e chegou a lutar na Segunda Guerra Mundial. Depois do fim do conflito, se formou em sociologia e deu aula na Universidade de Varsóvia. Perseguido por ser judeu, perdeu o emprego de professor e suas obras foram proibidas na Polônia.
Eu acho que esse é um traço importante na história pessoal dele, não só na história pessoal dele, como na história da sua esposa, de Janina, não é? Ambos foram marcados pelo antissemitismo e pela perseguição aos judeus. No caso da esposa dele, a perseguição nazista, e no caso dele, a perseguição pelo regime stalinista. Né? Bauman permanece na Polônia depois da Segunda Guerra Mundial, portanto, no regime socialista, soviético, que toma conta da Polônia, e que foi um regime que não... Embora não tivesse o antissemitismo como uma ideologia de Estado, tal como o nazismo teve, era um regime no qual práticas antissemitas e valores antissemitas tiveram presente.
Eles tiveram, os judeus da Polônia, diante de si, indiferença beirando a hostilidade por parte dos compatriotas poloneses e hostilidade indo até o assassinato por parte dos invasores alemães. Então, ficou muito difícil essa situação.
Acho admirável, principalmente os depoimentos dele com relação ao Holocausto. Ele foi judeu. Eu acho válidos, eu acho uma voz como a dele, que é prestigiada internacionalmente, continuar falando dos judeus, da perseguição, portanto, eu tenho muita admiração pela cabeça dele.
Bauman se mudou para a Inglaterra, onde vive até hoje e trabalha como professor da Universidade de Leeds. Ele acredita que a sociologia é uma ciência que pode ajudar a desfazer impasses que atormentam a sociedade há séculos.
Bauman é um pensador muito singular. Ele pertence a uma geração de intelectuais que pensa questões da sociedade com uma formação filosófica muito forte. Ele é um tipo de intelectual em extinção. Quer dizer, não se fazem mais Baumans a partir de um certo momento. Então ele não é simplesmente um sociólogo, né? Quer dizer, alguém que observa de uma perspectiva disciplinar os problemas sociais. Ele tem uma formação mais generalista, quer dizer, ele vem da filosofia, ele tem profundas informações históricas. Ele é, portanto, um exemplo dos intelectuais humanísticos, né, que ainda existiram durante o século XX.
A teoria desenvolvida por Bauman é aclamada pelos intelectuais e já rendeu os prêmios Amalfi pelo livro Modernidade e Holocausto e Adorno pelo conjunto da obra. Bauman já publicou 35 livros no Brasil. Entre os trabalhos mais conhecidos está O Amor Líquido, onde ele analisa as relações nos tempos modernos. Para o pensador, elas se tornaram mais flexíveis e geram níveis de insegurança maiores. Segundo Bauman, as pessoas não sabem mais como manter laços de longo prazo e muitas vezes se relacionam apenas no mundo virtual, o que acaba aumentando a solidão. Bauman define este comportamento como a modernidade líquida, onde nada é feito para durar e os relacionamentos escorrem por entre os dedos como água.
Bauman faz uma descrição do mundo atual baseada na ideia de líquido, de liquefazer, de que tudo que é sólido se desmancha, de que nada persiste e, sobretudo, o laço social está cada vez mais tênue. Ele dá como grande exemplo disso o que acontece nas redes, uma disponibilidade sem precedentes na história de opções amorosas, de consumo, profissionais, de viagem, que faz que nós estejamos o tempo todo seduzidos, mas sem dar densidade, sem dar continuidade, sem dar compromisso, sem construir vínculos.
Essa crítica que ele faz, ela aparece na metáfora da liquidez, quer dizer, a ideia de que o mundo está se liquefazendo, que as interações são interações que perderam digamos assim, a sua estrutura, a sua organicidade, abrindo espaço para um mundo muito mais aleatório, no qual o sentido parece desaparecer ou se multiplicar infinitamente. Então ele é observador disso, né, de como é que a modernidade deu passagem a formas sociais dissipadas, enquanto que as crenças que a gente tinha até um século atrás é de que as sociedades civilizadas ou modernas eram sociedades integradas.
A gente nota que, efetivamente, está muito fácil você desfazer uma relação. Também é fácil começar certas relações, mas desfazê-las é muito fácil. O descarte, antigamente, tinha rituais. Por exemplo, você se casava, casamento era indissolúvel, desfazer um casamento indissolúvel era muito complicado, às vezes significava você sair da lei, inclusive. Hoje foi ficando cada vez mais fácil. Hoje você desfaz um casamento num cartório, você não precisa nem ir à justiça. Quer dizer, nós desritualizamos a separação. E isso talvez seja uma coisa complicada, porque isso quer dizer que banalizamos a dissolução do laço. Você cria um laço, você fortalece o laço e de um momento para o outro você acaba com ele. Essa é uma experiência muito dura.
Zygmunt Bauman também é um crítico dos meios de comunicação, que, segundo ele, ajudam a espalhar e a banalizar o medo.
É uma crítica que chama atenção para a necessidade de mais lentidão, né? De mais reflexão, de mais hesitação reflexiva, né? E recusar criticamente a hipervelocidade, tá certo? A hipervelocidade que acaba contaminando e que é a característica central desse processo incontável de dispersão de imagens e de informação. Quer dizer, informação sem reflexão. Eu acho que esse é o dilema, a tensão para a qual ele está atento e ele chama atenção.
Olha, o medo é um recurso de administração social. O Estado, quando administra o risco, então o Estado e seus braços, o seguro, que nos empurram, que nos vende, sim, nós temos que fazer seguro, porque senão roubam um carro, mas eu tenho medo de que roubem meu carro. Ao mesmo tempo, o medo de adoecer e não ter médico, é esse medo que me faz ter um plano de saúde. O medo de andar na rua sem ter segurança, aí se multiplica o aparelho policial. O medo de que invadam as fronteiras nacionais ou outro país, e aí nós pagamos imposto para que o Exército supostamente defenda as fronteiras. Então, o medo é um recurso hoje do Estado.
Professor Bauman, during the last 27 years, Zahar, the publishing house, published at least 35 titles with youth books, with a total of almost 600,000 copies. This is a literary phenomenon, because your books are not concerned with niceties nor mundane matters. It's substance. How do you explain this record?
Well, I learned it from you about these thousands of copies. Publishers never told me, so I don't know. But
we have to go now to the...
Right. But, you see, I consider my vocation, so to speak, the nature of the work I am doing, is called sociology. Sociology was a relatively new phenomenon in universities, 150 years old, at maximum 200 years, no more. And it entered the modern era, where it was born under the slogan of helping managers to manage people, to prevent workers from going on strike, to prevent soldiers from deserting the army, to prevent prevent children from missing school, how to fight things like juvenile delinquency, alcoholism, and so on. In other words, how to achieve positive effect in managing other people. How to force or persuade or tempt other people to follow your own idea of order. And that was managerial philosophy of the time. Well, you are almost my age, not far, still far from it, but almost. And you remember Frederick Taylor, you remember Henry Ford Sr. They are the symbols of the tendency. Frederick Taylor, in his measurement of time and movements, assumed that the purpose of good management is to create a setting for the employee action that deprives the employee of options, of alternatives. He has to do what the setting dictates. And Henry Ford Sr. put it in practice. If you remember Charlie Chaplin from Modern Times, well, he actually replaced the subjectivity of the worker with the speed of conveyor belt, of the assembly line. Assembly line brings a detail, you have to manipulate it, don't have any other movement conceivable. Managers took upon themselves by cleverly designing the surrounding of the employee, took upon themselves responsibility for the results. They swore that if you only listen to me, if you design the setting of the workbench like that, the results will be positive. And sociology tries to meet the demand, to show what needs to be taken into account to achieve this effect.
And to change also.
Right. Mind you, it is not me who changed. It is the managerial philosophy who changed. Managerial philosophy today is very different. Managers no longer want to manage, no longer want to take responsibility for the effects of other people working. No, they move the responsibility on the shoulders of their subordinates. Subordinate must prove to the manager that he is worthy of keeping in work, bring the results. The meeting between the manager and the worker starts after results have been already brought in, and not before. Which means that on you, on me, on every other ordinary person who is in one or another form of employment, the burden of making decisions with your own life, understanding how the world is rotating, what is the mechanism between thinking and motives and results. Now, all that you have to acquire as your own skill. As a great German sociologist Ulrich Beck put it very concisely and very correctly, it is in our times the individual is expected and obliged to find individual solutions to socially created problems. If that is the case, for me, for some sociologists, it was a tragedy. There was, in 1990s, there was a panic among sociologists. We are losing touch with the public arena. What they really meant is that the old recipients of their services are no longer interested in this kind of services. For me, on the contrary, it was finally liberation of sociology from this slavery, to managerial reason. Yeah. To serve directly people on whom the burden of making things, making choices, making good life falls.
So, do you think this is the secret of your best-selling?
I don't know. What I know is 25 years or 34 years, I stopped writing for other sociologists. I just cut the middleman. So I address directly problems with which non-sociologists, ordinary people
This is the main
are
purpose.
confronted. And I think that I am very pleased that they agree with me, that that's really their problems.
And you are right.
There's no better reward for a thinker as people finding these thoughts useful.
Of course.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, the Chinese consider interesting times those with drastic changes, transformations, shocks, hard choices. Do you think that we are living now interesting times?
Yeah, well, this particular Chinese attitude is only half true. Because living in interesting times, in my view, is a mixture of curse and blessing. So it's not just curse, it is also a blessing. Blessing for thinking, caring people, because it brings to the attention, into vision, things which in normal, ordinary, quiet, uninteresting, repeatable, routine, boring times are invisible. There is an expression, hiding in the light. They are so much in the light that you don't notice them any longer. Interesting times mean troublesome times.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Something happens which was not expected, was not predicted, was not noticeable. Martin Heidegger, the great German philosopher, would say that interesting times bring things from 200 to 400. 200 means given to hand. They are so close, they are so predictable that you don't notice them any longer. The 400 is something else. You distantiate. You take your distance.
Yes.
There's an object. I don't know this object. I must learn something. I must make the unfamiliar familiar. So it is a benefit of interesting times. And fortunately, God gave us the chance of being creative and knowledgeable by putting us in interesting times. And as far as the curse side of that is concerned, unfortunately, it's our task to resolve it.
O Observatório da Imprensa faz um rápido intervalo na entrevista com o filósofo humanista Zygmunt Bauman. Voltamos daqui a instantes. Voltamos agora ao Observatório da Imprensa com a entrevista do pensador humanista Zygmunt Bauman, polonês, com quase 90 anos, que deu uma entrevista exclusiva para o Observatório da Imprensa.
Na recente visita ao Brasil, o polonês Zygmunt Bauman participou de um seminário internacional sobre educação. Com quase 90 anos de idade, ele falou durante 1 hora e demonstrou muita disposição na palestra que teve como tema os desafios líquidos modernos para a educação. Para Bauman, educar é como fazer um investimento para os próximos 100 anos. Hoje, de acordo com o filósofo, a educação reproduz privilégios em vez de aperfeiçoar a sociedade. O pensador disse ainda que a educação é vítima da modernidade líquida. Existe uma grave crise de atenção, na qual os jovens não conseguem se concentrar durante um longo tempo em uma mesma questão. Tudo é rápido e superficial. Na opinião de Bauman, a internet trouxe benefícios e um grande desafio. Como compreender todas as informações que conseguimos acessar de forma instantânea nos sites de pesquisa.
Praticamente todas as invenções apenas satisfizeram um desejo humano que já pré-existia. Por exemplo, andar mais depressa, o carro, voar, o avião, etc. As redes sociais e os desdobramentos mais recentes da internet mudam de figura isso, porque aí você passa a ter invenções que precedem o desejo delas. Não havia um desejo de algo que se chamaria Facebook. Esse algo que se chama Facebook surge e ele próprio vai modulando comportamentos humanos diferentes que a gente tenta depois entender quais são. Então, é uma novidade muito grande a rede social. E então, nesse sentido, o meio, a rede social, modula não só a mensagem, como também as próprias relações das pessoas. Com o Facebook, tudo isso que o Bauman fala de fragilidade do laço social vai às estrelas. Quer dizer, é muito mais fácil você estabelecer um contato e desfazê-lo. O compromisso praticamente some. E há um traço no Facebook que é que não existe delay para você postar uma coisa. Você lê algo, você digita rapidamente e manda em tempo real uma reação de fígado que às vezes é muito agressiva e que pode ter efeitos complicados.
We feel those days, because of Europe, because of everything, Brazil, that we are living in a state of war without fighting in general. So what is happening with this kind of world, that people are insecure, they live with discomfort, as Freud detected so many years ago. People are not happy.
Well, Clausewitz famously said that the war is politics by other means. I would say that also the other way it is true. Politics is the war by other means. But I wouldn't go as far as be so extreme as to say that we are living in a state of war. I know there are arguments to support this view, but I am concerned rather with the existential condition. That's what I am dealing with. The existential conditions of human beings as individuals, self-asserting, self-regulating, self-controlling even in a sense. What you call the state of war, I would call the state of permanent mutual suspicion and competition. We are all potentially in competition with each other. Once upon a time there were, for example, collective bargaining. The whole staff of a factory or an office joined together, they were collective power, they negotiate the conditions of their employment. That had been deregulated, it's no longer owned. The companies consider, and that is the part of the new philosophy of management, that periodical redundancies, periodical economies, periodical restructuring, in each such case some people are made redundant, that they are necessary element of good management. Necessary element. Why? Because it puts all the surviving members of the staff looking suspiciously to the neighbors, not uniting their interests to resist the employers, but on the contrary, trying to prove to the employers that when it comes to the next round of redundancies, he should be fired, not
the other.
Right, quite. So we are forced in the situation requiring constant vigilance, mutual vigilance and competition. And that's what creates the atmosphere of war. Nothing is certain, nothing is secure. You have to look around, and be careful. Friends may turn into enemies. There's no point in developing loyalty to somebody till death do us part, because, come different conditions, different circumstances, the calculation of gains and losses may change, and so on and so on.
Professor, we now live better and more. We are supposed to know much more. We demand, and sometimes we get more. but we are less repressed. Despite the fulfillment of so many dreams, we are still unhappy. And who is to blame, the economy or the other way? So what went wrong?
Yes. Well, I wonder whether we are more knowledgeable than Aristotle.
No.
I am not, I am quite sure, but what about the others? It's not quite clear. E.O. Wilson, the great biologist, used to say that we are inundated by information and starving for knowledge, for wisdom, starving for wisdom. And he's right. When I was a young person, I believed, together with my generation and partly your generation, that what prevents us from resolving all issues in the world is absence of the right knowledge. We need more research, more funds for research, more data, more information. Now I believe that it is the other way around, that the main obstacle is the excess of knowledge, excess of information. We are flooded with information. Every day, the new information produced is, according to some statistics, 1,000 times bigger than the ability of human brain to assimilate. So whenever I put to Google a question about information on something, whatever it is, I get several dozens of billions of answers. So it paralyzes me. What I learn from Google is that I will never know what I know should. And that's not necessarily that I am more wiser than I was. Of course, I have childishly easy access to information. I don't have to go to the library, look for hundreds of books in order to find one information I'm looking for. It is all at the distance of my fingers. I can do it without moving from my chair even. Does it mean that I'm wiser? I am not sure. I am not sure. On the contrary, I am humiliated as not only not being wiser than I am, but the very impossibility of acquire the wisdom which allows you to really authoritatively, responsibly answer to the question which is in front of you. Fortunately, we have Mark Zuckerberg with Facebook. We have Google. We have other things which supply us with what I know tranquilizers for recognize ailments which we suffer, like loneliness, lack of knowledge, and so on. We can have some sort of a substitute. The Google has the largest library in the world, but it's not a library of books. It is a library of snippets, of quotations, of bits and pieces, unconnected. Now, we can get every bit and piece whenever we like, very quickly. But whether that amounts to better knowledgeability, I don't know. My general answer to your question is that I don't believe that we resolve issues completely, not only now, but also in previous epochs. Gordon Allport once said that we never resolve issues, we only get bored of them, abandon them. That's one part of the aspect, but the other is that all answers we are able to give are until further notice. They are bound to be left behind by further development of knowledge. It's all temporary. The trouble that we can get the complete knowledge of anything is mitigated by this service of tranquilizers, because what we are offered is not the task of getting the vision of the totality, but the great amount of footnotes in what we are writing. If you have 200 footnotes, it is scholarly, it's scientific, and that saves you this big trouble.
But do you think that what humanity lacks is the human bondage? For instance, we never met, but we have something in common.
Human
bondage.
Bondage, yeah?
Yes. We never met, but something we have in common.
Well, there are points of correlation in our biographies, I think. To start with, we are coming from the same cultural heritage area, right? And we were born into it, in a sense, inherited it. On the other hand, we live through the same historical phases and experience them point blank, directly, not just reading books about them. A young person asked whether Napoleon or Alexander the Great lived in the same millennium. I find it difficult to answer.
But, Mao Zedong.
Yeah, but that is the problem. We have lived through the event. So I think we have in common. I don't ever suggest that individualization, which is really happening today in society, led to diversification, atomization of society. No, society has its diasporas, so to speak, which are mixed together in one space, but in fact spiritually lived they separately.
Mm-hmm. And what about our media? The media, the combination of entertainment with news reporting is it dangerous or is it good? How do you see the press, especially the press?
Yeah. Well, Marshall McLuhan, you remember as well, he's forgotten, unduly forgotten, he was a wise man. He spoke about media is the message. Media is the message. Not only the information delivers, but the very way in which it delivers this information is already a message. And the message, you are right, message of mass media is that news, in order to be worthy of your attention, need to be entertaining. And that's a very costly effect because students more and more are expecting from their teachers in universities entertaining products. And for example, the plague of which university teachers complain quite widely is that students, not to mention book of the volume, of the size of War and Peace, but even one article which is prescribed to them to read, to read it from the beginning to end is beyond their ability. They get bored and they abandon it. When you are trained by the TV screen, which has 200 or 300 channels, and you are zapping from one to another, never see the performance till the end. You are frightened that on another channel at the same time something more interesting may happen. Then the ability to concentrate, to focus on one task, on one problem, and be determined to follow it over time. Now this skill, it's a very difficult skill, mind you. It has to be trained. Children don't get it from birth. They have to be learning.
Trained.
This skill is disappearing. We are one of the collateral aid victims of electronics is precisely the patience and attention.
Yes. Some time ago, we were afraid of censorship, the police state, but now we live more or less in a free society, let's say it so, and there are other ways of subtract. If you read a good newspaper, you are not well informed. For instance, in Europe,
I don't know what the Portuguese equivalent to the English expression DIY, do it yourself, is. Is there such an expression?
Yes.
But we are moving in general terms, not only in this case, to the DIY society, like IKEA, this furniture firm. Is there already here?
Yes.
Well, they give you the kit and you assemble it yourself. Do it yourself. So this is a problem. The officers of censorship became redundant once we have internalized censorship. We are doing it ourselves, with the help, of course, of the so-called public opinion, pressure of commercials, pressure of media, pressure of newspapers, and so on. We are guided by the first page of O Globo, for example. O Globo is very reputable, very wise, very positive newspaper, but nevertheless it makes opinion for us.
Oh yes.
We embrace that opinion.
In this case,
yeah, quite. And then we apply it. Do it yourself. Censorship either could be bureaucratized, institutionalized, as it was in solid modernity, or it can be do-it-yourself censorship as it is in liquid modernity. That's my answer.
Yes, but if you have at a society many pluralistic options, it could be better. Brazil, for instance, has the media very concentrated.
Yes, there's a possibility, a very attractive possibility, pluralism on information, multi-centered information coming from different resources.
That's it.
But I want to disappoint you, terribly sorry, because all sociological research shows that this opportunity lies unused, abandoned. Most people who are using computer try to create for themselves what I called comfort zone, like echo chamber. The only sounds which you hear are echoes of your own voice, or hall of mirrors. The only sights you see are reflections of your own face. Comfort zone. Comfort zone you can't create on the street. You can't create it offline. You can create it only online, because it's so simple. You just stop answering to stop looking at the websites which you find resentful. You just switch them off. You can't switch them off on the street when you find passerbys which are not to your liking. What can you do? You have to live with them. You can't escape it. That's why I'm speaking about tranquilizers coming from Facebook and other internet gadgets.
O Observatório da Imprensa faz outro rápido intervalo na entrevista com o pensador humanista polonês Zygmunt Bauman. Voltamos já. O Observatório da Imprensa está de volta com a entrevista especial do filósofo e pensador humanista polonês Zygmunt Bauman. Do you think that we need new ideological options, for instance, thinking because of what is happening in Europe? Our political dictionary could not be enlarged, modernized, updated. For instance, liberalism means in economy one thing, in politics the other way. Couldn't be a liberal in both.
No, I agree with you. I am aware of that problem. There is a problem revising the vocabulary which we use to describe and comprehend the world. Yes, that's very true, but words and things walk different ways. You know, one of my personal tragedies is that I produce a lot of words and I achieved very little deeds, if any. The world is not stripped of its evils. So I think that what is needed, you say new ideology, it is wider than new words, new terms, but I think that we should step even one step further and say, go beyond ideology. One thing is the conception of effective collective action, and the other thing is conception of good life, which are both wrong in our society. The first one, conception of effective action, of resolution of troubles which you confront. It is a common belief, very seldom questioning, that the means, the cure to all kinds of social problems is increase in GNP, in the gross national product. Whatever is the problem, the reaction, we must produce further. Well, I just mentioned only on the margin that it is unsustainable because you cannot, on our planet, increase production permanently. There are limits. And the other thing is our conception of good life. Our generation, well, our
power.
Participation, not to which we belong, but in which we participate. Now, this generation has been brought up to believe that all the road to happiness leads through shops. And that's also a catastrophic idea, because it spells a lot of trouble for our children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. We are just living at their expense. We are depriving them of their living. So here, I think, lies the crux. We have to promote as strongly as we are able that the idea that these two assumptions are unsustainable. That here we have to learn different ways of reacting to problems and different ways of pursuing happiness.
Next year, we'll celebrate 500 years of utopia. Next year. Thomas More wrote...
500, yes.
Yes, 500. So, and we are seeing that, for instance, one of the good utopias of this moment is the European Union. Never we could imagine or dream that a voluntary integration in Europe for so many countries and no wars, no borders. And suddenly we see Hungary closing the borders because they don't want the strangers to come.
Yeah.
The Kurds.
Building walls instead of bridges. Yeah.
So we are seeing that utopia leads to dystopia.
Yes, that's right.
And next year we have to face the concept of utopia, an instant-made good society.
My dear Senor Dines, don't you think that it is fate of all utopias?
Oh, yes.
Utopia is creative, is a blessing as long as it remains utopia, because it guides human dreams, human actions, gives you courage to act and things like that. But when it is proclaimed fulfilled, then the trouble begins. Then it transforms into dystopia.
Dystopia.
That's true. That's true.
But do you think that the utopia of united Europe can go on?
Well, I published a little book called
I know.
Europe, an Unfinished Adventure. I still consider it a valid expression. It is still unfinished and still adventure. We are still walking into the darkness because there is no precedent to European Union. That's the first thing such in history. that after hundreds of years of mutual enmity, bloody wars, devastation, suddenly all is forgotten, apparently. The Frenchmen kiss the Dutch, the German. Germans kiss the Frenchmen, you know, they go to visit each other, they appreciate each other's culture and so on. And the things unthinkable in 1930s when I was a child, that was beyond comprehension, impossible to happen. It did happen. And also, the experiment in implementing alternative way of togetherness, this experiment is still continuing. And continuation means that there are all sorts of throwbacks. You encountered, for example, this influx of
refugees,
migrants. Previously, we encountered the collapse of the credit economy, of spending money which people did not earn, and that caused shattered the euro system and made it dubitable. But you see, one conflict after another. The history of European Union is a long string of antagonism, of conflict, of troubles, of problems.
But this can...
But somehow it survives so far.
It can be managed?
Yeah. Well, you see, I constantly repeat that I'm pessimist in the short run and optimist in the long run.
Good.
I want to believe, and if people really believe that the European Union is workable, in itself it is already one of very important conditions to make it workable. And the more we are doubting that it is workable, the more doubtful its future is. So let's be careful.
Let me ask you a very short question, but very important. The future of Poland.
Poland?
Poland. Mm. The country where you was born, and my father served in the army. So what is the future of... Because Poland suffered so many invasions and dilapidations, and now it's lost. It belongs to a new combination with Hungary, Czechoslovakia, and what is the future?
No, it's not time or place to summarize Polish history. It's a very long history, very dramatic. I don't even attempt it to do. But I would like to bring to your attention, you know about it, but let's recall it, the geopolitical, so to speak, factors in the history of Poland. Do you know that between Berlin and Moscow, there's not a single mountain? It's completely flat. So all armies in the history of the conflict between East and West went through Poland. It is a very, very severely tested nation. And no wonder that Poles are inclined to have this tendency to think about their history as martyrology, history of suffering. History of suffering, and they have very good reason to do so. Yes. And but if you have such a version of history, then obviously you tend to be suspicious to all the foreigners, bloody foreigners, you know that. Poland is in much safer, stabler, acceptable, likable condition that it was 25 years ago. I would go further, that it was ever in its history. It's much safer. I remember when I was a child, Poland was surrounded by enemies. Now there are no enemies around. And we have to think about distant Putin in order to be afraid.
Or Viktor Orban in Hungary. Another question about Brazil. What do you think of the Brazilian miracle?
Miracle?
Yes.
You think it's a miracle?
No. People use it to say that
yes.
there is a...
Well, I would say it is unfinished miracle. You are on the way. I wish you with all my heart to arrive there, you know. I would only say 66 representatives of 66 governments of the world came to Rio de Janeiro to consult, to learn from the experience of drawing 22 million people from their poverty. No one repeated that miracle. It's only Brazil so far. I wish you to continue, but it is also now the shortcomings are coming to the fore. And because the next year, Olympics, I think, are caused to rethink the situation. It may happen because it is unfinished miracle. And you can't make, in such condition, any prediction. What it inspires only is the efforts to avert the premature end of the miracle.
The temptations to...
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Quando o Observatório da Imprensa terminou a entrevista com o pensador e humanista polonês Zygmunt Bauman, a sua mulher, que o acompanhou na fulminante visita ao Rio de Janeiro, me disse: já ouvi Zygmunt milhares de vezes e ele tem cada vez a capacidade de dizer uma coisa nova. Espero que vocês achem isso também. E lembre-se, acompanhando o Observatório da Imprensa pela TV, pela internet, você nunca mais vai ler jornal do mesmo jeito. Uma boa noite.